What does it actually mean to own music anymore? Because if everything can be copied infinitely, do you really own anything at all? That's the question John Linnell from They Might Be Giants asked me while we were talking about a Wu-Tang Clan album, Once Upon a Time in Shaolin, that only exists as one single copy. This is one of the most fascinating conversations I've had on the show about creativity, longevity, and why they're still doing things completely their own way 40 years on. If you enjoy this episode, don't forget to jump up and rate it. Give the podcast a follow wherever you listen. This is the Mixtape with John Linnell from They Might Be Giants. Hello and welcome to today's Mixtape, and today on the show, it is an absolute pleasure to welcome John Linnell from They Might Be Giants. How are you, John?
Hello. How are you, Mark?
Very well, thanks. Very well. Thanks for coming on the show, making the time. Really appreciate it. Big news, mate. New album out on April the 14th. The World Is to Dig. First of all, John, first question that sprung to my mind was the album title. Like a little bit, I don't know, it sparked my curiosity a little bit. What does the album title mean to you?
Well, it's, as you may or may not know, it's based on a Maurice Sendak book for children called A Hole Is to Dig. It's kind of a, funny title for a book that's explaining the purpose of a hole, which is to dig. And I think my partner, John Flansburgh, just thought that would be a thing to riff off of. So that's basically it. It's a very optimistic, open-minded kind of idea that as bleak, this is my own, I'm adding this on to whatever his thoughts are about it, is that like as grim as the situation in the world ever gets, the world is still there for us to dig.
Fantastic. I've been sent a few sort of sample tracks as well to listen to. And the one that I enjoyed the most was Wu-Tang. Yeah, tell us a bit about that one. And are you a fan yourself of the Wu-Tang Clan?
Yes, absolutely. I guess the sort of explanation we have for ourselves for this song is that we like the idea of doing an homage to a band or another kind of music or some other cultural thing, but not remotely in the style of that thing. So it's as if, and I mean, the original germ of this idea was, what if we wrote a heavy metal song? Rather, what if we wrote a Tin Pan Alley song that celebrated heavy metal? That would be an example, like an old-timey kind of pre-war song that was about how great heavy metal was. So that, it was like the first draft. And then Wu-Tang is kind of the final product of that idea.
I'm a fan myself. Are you familiar with the story of the album, the CD that they put out, the one copy of the album that they make? Oh man, that's one of the greatest stories ever.
Martin Shkreli purchased it, and then he had all kinds of legal trouble, so he had to forfeit it, I guess, at some point.
Yeah, I think the story goes that. So for anyone who's unfamiliar, Wu-Tang Clan put out an album. I believe it was called Once Upon a Time in Shaolin. I think it was something along those lines.
Mm-hmm.
And they put out one copy of this album, and it sold for, I think, $1 million or $2 million or something like that to the guy, the CEO of the pharmaceutical company. He was subsequently arrested, and I think he had his assets seized by the FBI, and then they sold it themselves to some non-fungible token type, I don't know, company. But the best thing about that story that I heard, and I so wished it was true, and I suspected it might not be true when I first heard it, but I really wanted it to be true, was written in the contract for the sale of that album was that the Wu-Tang Clan, accompanied by Bill Murray, had one opportunity to perform a caper or heist to steal back the album from the guy. And I really wanted that to be true, but it wasn't true, unfortunately.
You have to say, like, I don't even understand how that works, because obviously everything that's recorded is infinitely reproducible. So the problem then is, what does it mean to own the only copy of something nowadays? In fact, is there even an object? And yeah, how does that work? It's a little bit like, as you mentioned, the concept of the non-fungible token is similarly like, well, what are we talking about here?
Yeah. I think from the band's point of view, it was kind of they were trying to make a statement on the value of music and how it had been devalued through sort of
Uh-huh.
streaming sites and things like that. I think that's what the sort of point they were trying to make with that
Mhm.
album. But yeah, and I think there was also clauses within the sale about reproduction and what can be done with it, and it could only be done at listening partners, and you couldn't benefit financially from owning the album. I think there was some, yeah, lots of stuff like that. But yeah, great story. And yeah, I think they had the first listening party was here in Australia. I think they had one in Hobart in Tasmania.
Okay. Do you know, as
Yeah.
far as you know, what was it ever bootlegged, this album?
So I've read that Martin himself has made copies and
Uh,
he's streamed them on Twitter. And that didn't go down very well. I think there were legal
yeah.
repercussions around that as well, as if he's not in enough bother as it is.
Seems like a deeply unscrupulous person, and
Absolutely.
running for top villain of the universe, I think. Is it sounds
Yeah, I think once the band found out who had bought it, because they didn't know initially, I think they tried to cancel the sale once they
uh,
knew who he was,
yeah.
and but it was too late. Great story, fantastic. It's your 24th studio album, John. Is that right? Am I right in saying that?
I think that sounds correct. It sort of depends on how you count the records,
Yeah.
because we've made, I mean, there's loads of compilations, and we've made records for kids, and it's sort of
Mm.
up to you to decide whether those count, any of those count.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, the main thing is we put out albums more or less every other year for since 1986 now. So that's 40 years, Yeah, it's all a blur to me, but and I'll leave it to someone else to do the counting.
Over that time, John, and over those years, how has your so first of all on this album, how was your songwriting process with John and the creative process, and has that process changed or evolved at all over the last sort of 20 odd albums, 40 odd years?
Yes, well, it has certainly. The technology has changed,
Mm.
and and then it's a little bit harder for us maybe to nail down the ways in which we've evolved. I mean, there's sort of obvious things that happened in the beginning where we began as a duo and we were recording sort of as though we were in a laboratory kind of thing. It's just the two of us creating sounds in a studio. And that gradually moved towards more and more towards having other musicians. And then about 10 years into the project, we became a band with a drummer and a bass player and everything, sort of more ordinary kind of rock band setup. Following that, we've continued to try to come up with interesting ways of recording and not just have it be a straight, recording of the combo. We bring in other musicians and we overdub various odds and ends, and so we've retained some of that method. And then more kind of technically, we went from recording everything on tape in the 80s to doing everything digitally, and that's enabled us, like, as everybody now knows, it's much easier to do a lot of stuff on your own. You can do a lot of recording at home now that we were unable to quite meet that technically, meet that kind of standard when we started. Although we did do home recording, but it was much more low fidelity back in the day.
And also, I saw as well, which I always love to see, the album's coming out on all the physical formats, CD, cassette, and vinyl as well. Are you a fan of the physical formats yourself, John?
I would put that on my partner's ledger. He's been a big vinyl enthusiast all along, even since the time when there was only vinyl. He's always collected vinyl, and so I think he's really been enthusiastic about reviving vinyl in the last couple decades. And he pays a lot more attention to the quality. I think he's very interested in making sure it's the pressing is done correctly, and that's something that the standards unfortunately have slipped, and since in our lifetime. I think that there was a much higher standard back in the day, and it is possible to get your vinyl pressed properly, but it's also very commonplace for people to do a bad job.
Absolutely. If anyone wants to get involved in the physical formats, it's tmbgshop.com is the place where you can go and at the moment, time of recording, pre-order the album. But yeah, that's where you can grab that. And if you're listening on demand or on any of the streaming places or on the YouTube channel, I'll put a link in the description down below so you can go and grab that from the shop. John, finally on the album, in one sentence, why should people listen to The World Is to Dig?
Wow. Well, you're putting me on the spot there. It's a personal choice. I don't know whether I can argue that it's necessary, but I suppose the thing is that we've always been the kind of band that people consider sort of their personal choice. Like we're not something that gets forced down your throat. Really, all along, I think people have discovered us and felt like that lent a kind of, personal relationship to the band for them, if that makes sense grammatically. We're maybe not everybody likes us, but we are available for anyone to like us, and we're deeply committed to this project. Obviously, we're not we're not doing it for the money, although we do make a living at it.
The one thing I've noticed on your fan base is a very dedicated, passionate fan base for
Yeah.
Might Be Giants. Like they're
They're
really
not. They're
sort of
not.
voracious.
You're listening to The Mixtape.
The Mixtape is brought to you in association with Giglist. Giglist is your one-stop shop for all your live events. If you're looking to get out and experience some live music, you can filter by artist, venue, suburb or date. If you are an artist, it will take you less than a minute to list your gig for free on the website. The Mixtape brought to you in association with Giglist. Gigs in a list.
All right, John, let's jump into the mixtape track choices then, mate.
Right.
So the show's called The Mixtape, and when I get guests like yourself on, as a way of exploring your influences and inspirations, I ask you to make up an imaginary mixtape and pick a few tracks for it.
Okay.
So track one of your mixtape, John, is an attention grabber, mate. What would you put on your mixtape as an attention grabber?
Attention
Kick you off.
grabber. Well, okay, there's a old song from the 60s that maybe I should save this for the cover because it is a cover song by a group called We Five. And they were covering a sort of folky song done by a couple, but they did a much more rock version, very kind of guitar-based version of the song. And We Five's, it was their, I think, one big hit, and it's called You Were On My Mind. And it's a pretty exciting kind of songwriting as far as I'm concerned, because it takes a lot of unexpected turns. It's a very intense song with a very kind of unexpected and emotional kind of lyric to it. I don't know what else to say about it, except I'm still like fascinated by it. I think it's just a really, really interesting song.
Excellent choice to kick it off with, John. And track two of your mixtape is what's a song you sing in the car or the shower?
Okay. Well, this is another old song. I'm probably going to be focusing on the 60s too much, but it's now what's the name of the guy? Paul. He was the singer. He was the singer who did Pretty Flamingo. Is it Paul Jones? I'm forgetting now.
From Manfred Mann. Yeah.
Manfred Mann.
Yeah. Paul Jones. Yeah.
Paul Jones. Okay. He did a song. I think it may have been a solo track that he did, and it was called, again, I have to look this up, but I think it's called I've Been a Bad, Bad Boy. That's the title, and that is the chorus. It's a kind of more of a big production with like a string section and everything. And it's part of some movie that he was in that I think kind of sank like a stone. I don't think it was a super popular movie, but anyway, I've Been a Bad, Bad Boy, Paul Jones. I sing that in the shower. I literally do sing that one in the shower.
Excellent choice, mate. I don't think he does anymore. He's retired or maybe even passed away. But for a long, long time, he had a long-running blues show on, I think, Radio 2. It used to be a late night show. And I used to love listening to that show. It was fantastic.
Oh, right.
Really mean harmonica player as well, if I remember
Cool.
rightly. Track 3, John. What's your favourite cover version?
Favorite cover? Ooh, boy. Yeah, I guess I don't know. I'm just gonna say "Do You Want to Dance" by the Ramones. That was another song that was very popular in the 60s, and the Ramones did their own version, and it's their version is very cool. They made a Ramonesy sounding version of it.
What makes a good cover version for you, John? What do you look for in a cover?
Not being too slavishly adhering to the original, and bringing something to the to the version. Otherwise, what's the point, kind of thing,
Yeah,
I guess.
absolutely. And track 4, John. What is a song you would like to play to your 18-year-old self if you could?
Well, this might be a little bit random, but so the guys who formed the DBs, the band the DBs, Chris Stamey and Peter Holzapfel were the two songwriters in that band, and they did a kind of a duo project in the 90s, and I think they co-wrote this song called Angels. It's just it's a jangly pop song by Chris Stamey and Peter Holzapfel, and it's got a very cool lyric. And of course, my 18-year-old self it was written after I was 18, so
Yeah.
I wouldn't have. There's no way I would have been able to hear it. No. Actually, that's a really interesting question. I should think of something more futuristic to play for my 18-year-old self.
There's lots of different ways people come at that, like life advice, lyrical life advice, or
Right. I think that the more interesting thing would be to play my 18-year-old self something from that was technologically and stylistically not yet invented. So what would that be? Maybe something by Daft Punk or something like that. I don't know.
Sigur Rós gets picked in that category a bit.
Oh yeah.
That sort of like the little bit sort of futuristic, for sure.
Exactly.
What sort of stuff were you actually listening to when you were 18, John?
When I was 18, let's think about this. I don't know. It was probably Alice Cooper or something like that, Of course, he had a song called 18, so that's probably why I thought of it. But he was actually that song was in my record collection when I was 18, so I guess that's probably why I thought of it.
And track 5, John, if you were making up your mixtape for like a romantic interest, you want to let someone know that you're keen on them in that way, what would be a song you would use for that, mate?
Romantic interest. It might be a Frank Sinatra song called Nice and Easy. I think that's a kind of without getting too personal, I think that's the kind of song that I think has a message to it that I would approve, basically, in that situation.
And finally, for your mixtape, John, a deep cut album track or B-side?
I don't know if this was a B-side but Frank Black, when he went solo, he had, I don't think this was released as a single, so I guess it's a deep track. There's a song called Manitoba from the album Show Me Your Tears. That's a beautiful song. It's a really intense song. I don't think too many people have heard it, but what do I know? Probably, if you're a Frank Black fan, you've probably heard it.
That's the idea of that track, is that choice is just to get sort of unearth those gems that are sort of underappreciated and don't get the kudos that they deserve. So that's a great one for that. And the other question I had for you was any imminent tour announcements? I know you probably can't say too much, but for us down in Australia for the new album, any chance of any future dates?
I would say we are coming to Australia, but I don't think it'll be this year. We've got a tour that's already booked here in the States that's beginning soon. So we'll be kind of in the eastern United States for the rest of the spring, I guess. Going as far as Chicago and parts between, and I'm in New York, so between here and Chicago, just a lot of fairly close dates. And then in the fall, we're going to Texas, and we'll have some other dates that I haven't completely memorized, but it's mainly the United States. I think that probably starting next year, we'll be going overseas, and that's about all I can predict. I don't know exactly when or where, but as you know, we've certainly played Australia a lot in the recent past, and so I imagine we'll be coming back
Excellent. Look forward to that. We'll round out with a quick fire 5, John. I call them quick fire, but we've got like sort of 5 minutes, so you can elaborate on your answers. If you want. These are mostly geared around like touring and live shows and stuff like that.
Okay.
First one, what's on your tour rider? Anything weird or interesting?
I could probably not actually. I think it's very practical stuff. I like root beer, so that's on there. But there's nothing unusual, I don't think, about our rider. It's pretty normal.
Do you have a pre-show ritual?
Well, I have to tell you, this is no secret, but I'm 66 years old, and so if it's possible between sound check and show, I will actually try and get a nap in sometimes. And you'd be amazed at how much better a show I can perform if I've just had a very brief little cat nap.
I saw something online recently that said, it was like a meme or something that said, if you see someone over 50 out after 9 o'clock at night, they've definitely had a nap. Yeah,
Exactly.
That's true. That's true for me as well, for sure. 100%. Is there one thing or personal item that you take on tour with you, like from home, like a home comfort or anything like that?
Yeah, I like cameras. I'm kind of a vintage camera guy. In fact, here's one I just got right next to me.
Nice.
It's the Russian. Started off as a Leica copy, and then it kind of evolved. But this is probably from the 1950s. It's just a 35 millimeter camera, with a fairly, it doesn't have any electronics in it, but it's fun. I like taking film photography when I'm out on the road, and so it's just a way to enjoy traveling around.
Is it hard to get film for those cameras, or is a specialist shop still around?
No, that's still. In fact, I think it's it's enjoying a revival right now. The 35 millimeter anyway. That this is like starting to perk up the Kodak company, which has been not doing well recently, but I think they're probably starting to enjoy more sales thanks to the revival of film and Fuji. I think Fuji as well in Japan.
And what's your favorite city to play live, John?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I mean, I like being home, so we'll be doing some shows here in Brooklyn. There's a beautiful theater down here called the King's Theater that we played last year. That's amazing. I suppose I love traveling. I love seeing interesting, exotic places, but I also like being home. So I guess I'd have to say New York.
Finally, if you could time travel to one concert in history, which concert would you choose?
Well, it'd be interesting if you really were opening that up. It'd be interesting to find out what ancient music actually sounded like, because nobody knows, and there wasn't, up until the Middle Ages, there was no accurate notation. So if you could go back and hear what the Romans were doing or the Greeks back in the day, kind of answer some questions about what their music actually sounded like, because all we really know is the fake versions in Hollywood movies.
That's a great answer. That's the most amount of time travel we ever had. We've had like Bach and Beethoven recitals before, but no one's ever gone back that far. So that's a great one.
I would take either of those as well.
John, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting to you, mate. Thanks so much for coming on the show. The World is to Dig, They Might Be Giants is out April the 14th, TMBG shop for all the physical formats and out everywhere on all the streaming platforms as well. Good luck with the record, John. Thanks so much for coming on the show, mate.
Thanks, Mark. Hope to see you out in the Down Under someday soon.
I'll definitely get to you next show, mate. Yeah, for sure. Thank you, mate. Cheers.
Cool. All right.
See you later.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for listening to this week's mixtape. If you would like to get more from the mixtape, you can catch up with over 150 archive episodes by visiting themixtapepodcast.com. Also there you'll find links to the YouTube channel, my social media pages and my Patreon if you would like to get even more content that doesn't go out on the radio show or the podcast. You can secure your mixtape backstage pass. All of those links are available at themixtapepodcast.com. You've been listening to The Mixtape and I've been your host, Mark. Until next time.